Welcome back. In part two of our conversation with Dr. Ashraf and reporter Mackenzie Rigg, we talk about one particular patient who stuck with both of them, a man named Abdul who didn't look like he'd make it, but in the end did. And welcome back, along with Mackenzie Rigg and Dr. Sohi Ashraf. We are talking once again about an amazing trip, an amazing series that you did about a doctor in Africa. We talked about, and readers, if they're familiar with the series, saw so much loss. But there are those major saves. And one story in particular stuck with you guys that you wrote about. Talk about Abdul. Talk about when you first met this young man, how he was different from a lot of other patients, and what you encountered, and that unbelievable trade-off that's so common here, but what you can do versus what it might do if you do it.
Right. So I think right off the bat when we saw Abdul, 19-year-old, very healthy-looking young man in a ward full of still young people, but people in the infectious disease ward with HIV, multiple opportunistic infections, you know, with life expectancy less than a couple of months, weeks, a lot of them on their, you know, no better way to put this, on their deathbeds. And you see this young man who looks healthy, and he just sticks out to you right off the bat from a distance. So I think right off the bat, that was the thing that drew us towards him when we're examining him that day. Fast forward a couple of days when we saw him become ill and start having seizures, I think we kind of kicked into overdrive, kind of like we would here. You know, patients here, you don't really think twice about it. You just kind of go and do things. Like you said, we don't have a limit, we're not limited to our resources. We can do whatever we can here to save patients. So I think given that, him being such a healthy young man, you know, amongst a sea of very sick people, really stuck out to me to kind of do whatever I can to give this guy a chance to live.
And one of the things you write about, Mackenzie, is there's a mathematical equation here. $33 for us, people aren't going to lose sleep for the most part one way or the other in one day. For them, as you said, it takes a family here. The family, if someone's fortunate, bring them in. They want to stay with their loved one because they need to be part of the care process. In Uganda, as the doctor explained, but what worked out to $33 was 3 months. And he's one of many children. And as you said, it could have bankrupted the family if they had to come up with that amount of money, plus off time for work and all the rest. It snowballs. This life and death decision could have, like I said, gone one way or the other for the family, right?
Yeah, and I learned that Abdul's parents, his father's a butcher and his mom sells sweet potatoes along the side of the road. They make $12.50 a month. They have 8 children, 2 are still in school, and so is Abdul. So when we met Abdul, like Sohi said, he was so healthy and strong, and he also epitomized hope because he was in high school and wanted to graduate, and here he was, this like strong, healthy looking man that looked like he had such a bright future. So when we saw him deteriorate so quickly, and so he had to make that decision, it wasn't, I think, until all of us sat back, you know, he was intubated, he was stabilized, he was in ICU, and he was okay, that we all kind of stood back. And I know Sohi obviously thought, I did too, like, what did we just do? What could have happened? What could happen to this family? Because it costs a lot of money to be in the ICU alone, and that doesn't include the meds or the tests or anything else that you might need. And we knew that there was a family there. And so we kind of had to wait and see. And we found out that he had tuberculosis, so it could be treated. And at the end of the day, an anonymous donor did come in and really save that family from probably starving to death or having to make some very difficult choices. So while it is a really happy story, it really highlights how transparent the cost of healthcare is and how one decision can have such an enormous impact on an entire family. And we don't think about that here. Like you said, we walk into the emergency room, we know we're going to be treated and treated well and get the healthcare we need. You know, in Abdul's case, he had come to Malago before with the same symptoms. He was having headaches and dizziness, amnesia, aggression. Obviously something was going on in his head and his brain, and the family didn't get that brain scan, that $33 scan, until Abdul was unconscious and needed it so desperately. Somehow they miraculously got the money together. So to think about that decision, knowing your son is sick, knowing that there are symptoms that seem pretty serious, being urged by some of the smartest doctors I've ever met that you need this scan so we can figure out the best way to treat you, and then to turn around and have to go home because you can't pay the $33.
Right.
And the postscript is he's doing well, right?
He is. He's back in school. I have a photo of him sitting between his mom and I think his sister.
Last question. Obviously, this conversation not in a vacuum. The world reminded of bad things again in the last few days. And now the American public struck again with that balance of, you know, who to let in, who not to, or where to either close ranks or reopen. Not to litigate that conversation, but instead, if the public could be for one day in Malago and see what they saw, the American public, do you think there'd be more maybe gratefulness for what we have here, more compassion for what there is in other places that don't have it? What do you think, having never been there, and granted you're in the field of medicine and yourself, what do you think the general reaction of the public would be more than through the pages of the dailies that this appeared in?
I think it's a eye-opening experience. You realize how privileged you are living here, and what hardship people live in. At the same time, you see that people with limited things become so resilient to try to help others. I think that's the big thing. At the end of the day, no matter where you're from, where you're born, what your religion is, you're a human being, and every human being deserves the same rights as everybody else. And I think that's what's inspiring when you go there.
Well, it was an amazing series and an amazing 6 weeks, it sounds like, for you as well, Doctor. Thank you very much. And Mackenzie, great series. I appreciate the time. We've put as much information as possible. Also, if you go online to check it out, but we've also created a link here so you can check out the series for yourself. And if you want to be of any help, I'm sure the folks not just here but there will certainly take it with open arms. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.